I guess just kind of talk about getting this time of year. Is it kind of exciting to kind of see what you got when the guys take the field in the fall?
Yeah, we kept away from them so much during this time of the year. And although they never leave, it's not like the old reporting dates in the old days where they used to all go home for the summer and you couldn't wait to see them when they got back. But at the same time, it's a time where you can get your hands back on them and get back on the field and get rolling again. You kind of get it. These days right here, I can't stand them. I either want to go back on vacation or I want to start practice. That in between time is just kind of hard to hold yourself back. But we've heard real good reports on their efforts and work habits and everything through the summer and all the progress they've been making. So we're actually extremely anxious to get with them.
A lot of the players have had real good reports to us on the new guys on the defensive line, especially Lawson, Daniel, and Montravius. Have you heard the same stuff? And if so, I mean, how big is that going to boost that defensive line?
Yeah, we actually brought Coach Ryan Russell, our strength coach, in this morning for our defensive staff and kind of got him to tell us how some of the guys have been doing over the summer and progress they've made and work habits, attitudes, different things like that. And he was very complimentary of those guys. We're hopeful they're going to make contributions and make them pretty immediate. But we'll just have to see. You don't want to put too much pressure on the freshmen. They're very capable, talent-wise, and we do have some areas where we think their ability is going to be key. Third down edge pass rush. So Montravius has made some great progress too. But just still, until you get them on the field and start working with them in the big picture, you just never know.
Ellis, how difficult? There's been a whole lot of talk at media days and everything else about the targeting rule. And what they say is that if they make a mistake, they're going to make the mistake in favor of throwing somebody out. How hard is that going to be to deal with?
We actually met with officials yesterday morning, and got the interpretations on it. The general intent of the rule, I'm in favor of it. But my biggest fear is that if they keep bringing us down lower and lower, I think you're going to see knee injuries on offensive players and neck injuries on defensive players. The one thing I hope that it will stop is guys leaving their feet, launching, if you will, and going obviously to the head. But it's going to be, the examples they showed us on film in the referee session the other day. A lot of times when the ball carrier or the defender, whomever is getting ready to be in the collision, they will naturally drop their hips or they drop their shoulders for the collisioning, and that brings the head down. And so a lot of these things are not intentional. And for that reason, I think it's like a lot of rules. Sometimes the unintended consequences are brought along, and we are concerned about it. Because I think it could affect both sides of the ball, probably a little bit more on defense. But there's some blocks, by downfield offensive players, and there's some blocks in the kicking game that were on those clips. And it was pretty obvious that the intent was not to hurt anybody or to launch toward the head. And it was still called because the collision was head-to-head. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see how it unfolds.
What do you tell your players?
Well, we're going to have to coach it. Some in particular, like the blind side hits, you're going to have to coach it to be more in a shielding attitude than an aggressive attacking attitude, and cut out on the old blind side type of hits. But the ones where you're trying to tackle somebody and you don't leave your feet, we're just going to have to deal with the consequences, I guess, if it occurs. But we've never coached anything like that, and I wouldn't coach anything like that. Some of them are very obvious. You can see it when sometimes they take a forearm up high, trying to go up above the shoulder pads, or when they leave their feet and lead with their head. But some of them, guys are still on the ground running, and you see them kind of just turn. They don't even make the contact with their head, and the intent is not to hit the other guy's head, but they come into the chest area and it slides up on the head. And I just don't know how you take that out of football.
There's been a lot of talk this offseason about if hurry-up offenses lead to more injuries. You've had some comments about it in the past. You've been coaching against it. What do you think of that stance?
I never looked at it from that viewpoint. the only things I feel is that, you know, to me, if both teams can get lined up, we'll find out who the best executing team is. If both teams are not lined up, then you find out who got there fastest, I guess. So to me, in some cases, it's not football. But I think when the referees are consistent, then the defense has no disadvantage. I think in the early years with the speed-up offenses, the officials, especially in the SEC, because you didn't see it very much, they weren't as good at the consistency of the mechanics. And I think they've gotten better. And probably we've gotten a little more accustomed to it, you know, on defense. So I don't see it as big of a problem as it used to be. And I've really never looked at it from that injury standpoint.
It's almost like a
Safety.
Yeah, it's almost like an unwritten rule to allow like 12 seconds, you know, between snaps. I know Gus wants to be able to go faster. I mean, what do you think of that? I mean, obviously, the offense want to catch the defense off.
Well, their intent is to go fast, to get more plays, and to challenge the other team in conditioning and mental toughness. I like all that. What I don't like is when the ball's snapped and one side's not lined up or the other. I've seen it snap so fast the offense isn't lined up.
Right.
So I don't know what you're trying to prove there. But the pace, to me, is a part of the game, and I think it is good when you challenge somebody else from their conditioning and toughness standpoint. That's part of the game. So, you know, I don't know. I guess in an ideal world, I'd want a minimum 5 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever. When that ball's put on the ground, you will not snap it for 5 seconds. Now, if you can't get lined up by then, it's tough. You know, you can't get lined up.
Going back to the targeting rule, did you see the Clowney hit against Michigan this offseason? Mm-hmm. Two prominent figures, the AC coordinator officials and Mike Pierre said this week that hit would have been cause for rejection under the new rule.
See, and that's one of them I'm talking about. And, of course, I hadn't looked at it probably a month or two. But there was no intent to go at someone's head. There was no intent to try to cause injury. And I think when they start taking it to the point that they're having to interpret it, then I just, you know, we're getting on it's going to be a slippery slope, I think.
Does that bother you that hit, which by a lot of people has been kind of lauded as a textbook tackle, a great example of how to tackle, could now be cause for ejection?
Yeah. Now, had he come, you know, on a quarterback and you know, hit him or stuck him in with his hat or something of that nature, where it's something you obviously could not have helped. You obviously could have avoided, but what he did to me, I mean, this is a guy, but he was stunning on that thing. That was a corner blitz with him running a slant stunt, and somebody turned him loose. And he hits a guy out a yard in the backfield. Within that much time, there's no ability for him to change his body. He can't get lower. You know, I don't see how that could be called. And, you know, I don't know. It is a concern. Our whole staff was concerned about it, but you know, the referee's not the rules maker. They just deliver the message. Like he said, every rule put in the book is voted on by coaches.
With the punishment being so severe, you talked about in the spring that you're talking about ejections now for this. Do you see it as possible that, all right, you have a Clowney, but we'll put it to this team, to this defense, a Garrett or a Ford, that an offensive player would deliberately put themselves in the way to try and get one of the defenders ejected?
I don't think that's going to happen. What's going to happen is, with the speed of these guys and some of the things they're doing, I mean, they cannot control their body at certain times to move it 6 inches down or 6 inches over, et cetera. And to me, it's pretty obvious. And they got all these replay abilities, and every game we play is on TV. Well, that's part of the reason all this is coming about, the celebrations and all these other things, because they're on a microscope and national TV every week. But to me, you can tell when someone is trying to go to the head or not. You see them sometimes in the DBs, they leave their feet, you know, on a guy coming across on a crossing route or something of that nature. You know, but when two guys are running and both of them drop their center of gravity and the heads happen to hit, and neither one of them stuck their head in there intentionally, they just were on the same plane, I think we're getting in an area there where I don't know how you're going to avoid that kind of thing. And even a 15-yard penalty is enough, but throwing a kid out of a game, I think it is. You know, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, the rule's the rule, and it will be for 2 years also, because It's a 2-year rule cycle.
How tough is that going to be to swallow if you get an ejection, a penalty? They go back and say, well, it did not deserve an ejection, but you still had to suffer a penalty and maybe led to a game-winning touchdown. I mean,
Yeah, I was
that's pretty
surprised by
hard.
that too. When they explained the rule, they're not going to take the 15 yards off even if they decide it was not the correct call. But you can have a personal foul without an unsportsman.
Is there any, I know it's for injuries, but it also seems like offense sells tickets, as the old cliche, Fitz wins championships. Is this another advantage for offenses?
I don't think that's why this was done. Now, if it is an advantage, I would probably say if you had 10 of these called the next year, I'd probably say about 6 or 7 of them are going to be on a defensive player. But some of the examples they gave us the other day, the film clips, one of them was an offensive guy blocking downfield, and another one was on a special teams play on a block. So it's not just going to affect defensive players.
Coach Spurrier said during media days, I asked him if he thinks you could replicate the success you had at South Carolina that first year, having such a big turnaround as you guys did statistically. He said basically that if you had the players and the talent that you guys had at South Carolina, that anything would be possible. From what you saw in the spring, do you think you have the talent to make that kind of turnaround happen here?
You know, I don't know that I can make that judgment in 15 practices. I think I was asked earlier, we're probably deeper than we were at South Carolina or Mississippi State, but I don't know our players well enough yet to know, what we'll accomplish. That first team I inherited there, those guys, we had a very physical and deep front, and we were very thin in the secondary, and up until the last game, the game at Clemson and the bowl game, we were very fortunate with injuries in the perimeter, but we lost a couple of kids late, and we played poorly in both those games. And the one thing I would agree with him on, it does come back to players for the most part.
That defense had multiple first-round picks on it, even from this past year, and then you throw a guy like Clowney in there and the subsequent picks in later rounds like Swearinger and those kind of guys. Do you see, not necessarily multiple first-round picks, but do you see that kind of caliber of player?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got good, solid SEC players that have got, when you play like they did last year, they're going to have to play differently. I don't think we have to have different people. We've got to have different performance. Again, I don't know that I've seen them enough, but at this stage, I want to believe we've got enough talent. But it's going to have to be put on a game field.
We talked about spread offenses. What is, you defended against Malzahn at least in practice and everything. What's different about what he wants to do and he and Brett want to do on offense?
Than the other spread teams.
Then the norm, that whether it's execution, whether it's speed, whatever.
The biggest thing that separates his I call it speed of operation from the other teams is he has a very physical running game. And I like that, number one, because it will hopefully make us more physical as a team. A lot of the spread teams that do not have a physical running game, their defenses get soft because they're the only thing you work against all spring and preseason. But that's where the foundation is. It's a very physical running game. And then it has the element of the option, has the element of the quarterback play actions and having to defend him on different plays. It has formation deception and then that speed of operation. So hopefully, we won't encounter an opponent. Someone will major in power football will be a little different. Someone that majors in spread with throwing it 75% of the time will be a little different. But we will have gotten the power. We will have gotten the option. We will have gotten the fast tempo. We will have gotten a lot of formation adjustments. And I think it'll make it easier for us defensively from week to week. We should not see any type of offense that our players are not somewhat comfortable when they hit the field.
It should help you there in those first 3 games.
Should.
Considering how much they pass.
And even after that, because I know in coaching on teams where we ran no fast tempo, you try to replicate that with your scout team during the week, and it still blows up on them at the beginning of a game. When a team can really speed it up, it blows up on your kids, and it's tough for them.
Does he have almost kind of a computer brain when it comes to that, making those snap judgments, decisions on matchups?
You talking about Coach Malzahn?
Yeah.
Well, I think he's obviously, he has a very, a knowledge of his offense is very quick, you know, to counter what you're doing, and all great offensive coaches do, you know, whatever the offense is. And the tempo will speed up when you allow big plays because it takes the aggressiveness away from you, gets you on your heels, and then they try to take advantage of that.
In May, you said you were going to be visiting some staffs over the summer before you got back here. Did you have the time to go and see?
You know, we did. We, as individuals, kind of contacted a few friends, like we always do, and bumped into a couple of friends on vacation. We talked X's and O's somewhat, but we did not ever have an opportunity as a staff to really visit with another staff.
Demetrius McNeil had a pretty tumultuous spring. What have the reports been on him this summer that you've heard?
He was good, other than that, had an incident right at the end and missed a few practices. He's had a good summer, and injury-wise and attitude and work habits, had a good summer. Struggled a little bit with one course, but is getting it done. So we're very optimistic, you know, he's ready to return and be right on target.
He was your lead returning tackler, obviously, and yet it wasn't on the preseason All-SEC team. What expectations does he have? Do you have for him going into the fall?
Well, we're hoping, I mean, you know, I'm expecting him to come back and play as a returning starting SEC safety. Whitehead had a very good spring, and you're talking about two guys who started a lot of ball games here, and they've got some seasoning to them, and we need it badly. The answer to that is to double teach Josh Holsey, and you know, we'd much rather see Demetrius come back and be ready to go.
Does he come back on that one line of your depth chart starting August? Or?
Right now, he's penciled in slashed with Holsey.
Okay.
Holsey will be the first boundary safety.
How tough is it for a guy like Jake Collin, you know, missing spring practice because of classes, to be able to, you know, get in front of you guys and show what he can do, and how important is this?
Well, it was hard. It was hard for him. I think he missed a total, maybe just 2 practices, but he missed a lot of meetings. He's an experienced player, and had he been in the same system going into his senior year after 4 years, probably wouldn't hardly rep him. But learning a new system and putting in a new defense, it wasn't a good situation for him. But he is close to already graduating, and he's in that last year, and it's something that just could not be moved. And we had to leave it where it was. And y'all know we practiced and met in the mornings, so it's very unusual that he had that class conflict, but it was one that couldn't be moved.
Ellis, how much did, for your room, for your dynamic, does Harris Gaston and Chris Landrum moving on, how much does that affect the way you look at the room now, and how much you look at down the depth chart a little bit?
Both those guys did pretty good in spring, and would have had a shot maybe to challenge to be the 5th linebacker, or at least be traveling on some special teams. We've got plenty of linebackers right now on the depth chart because of going from a 3 linebacker system to a 2 linebacker system. Of course, Garrett, we moved out of the position to be the hybrid, and had moved Javier Mitchell, but he's moved back inside now. So really, we had a lot of linebackers for a 2 linebacker defensive system. So right now, numbers-wise, it did not put an issue in the depth chart at all.
Is that one area this fall where you're looking for a couple of guys to really step up their play?
Well, Kenny Flowers, you know, when you sign a junior college player, you want to see him on the field. And, you know, we'll just have to see how quickly. I wish he could have been here in spring. That's always preferable. He's had a good summer, worked real hard. Coach Russell's been fairly impressed with his strength, his power, and all that conditioning. I'm just hopeful that he mixes it up into 2 deep real quickly, because that's obviously, you don't sign junior college players to come in a red shirt.
When you looked at your defense after spring, what areas of improvement did you really feel like going into fall, we got to hit this hard?
One area that we really feel like we've got to test and find out how good we are is pass rush. And I'm talking about without bringing pressure. How good are we? And we did not have a lot of live obvious third down situations other than the ones that occurred in the scrimmages. So by the time you get to the end of spring, each player probably had very, very minimal reps in that situation. So I don't know that we know that yet, and that's an area we've got to work more on, and it's an area of concern. Probably the other thing we were very concerned about was the depth at safety. Y'all asked about Demetrius, and when he was gone, it was obviously pretty thin back there, and we've got to develop some depth there. It goes back again to him coming back and having a good reentry, and also the kid you got to look at most quickly is King, because he's a junior college player. Again, we've heard great things, but he didn't get spring practice. So that'll be a focal point for us in the secondary. But those are two areas in which we have concerns that we think we've got the answers to them, but we've got to find out pretty quick. And that would be our pass rush of our front four and depth at safety.
Well, Halsey work just as safety, or he works in the corner as well?
Try to double teach him. And a lot of that will depend upon Demetrius and how well he comes along.
Based on what you know right now, I mean, where do you think Flowers would fit in best?
Either or. I've got him working the wheel right now because mentally it's a little bit easier. Doesn't have to make as many of the calls. Physically, there's not much difference in those two positions. So I thought it'd be easy for him to come in and pick up on the wheel.
Well, Brandon King, where do you think he's going to fit?
Brandon's working at boundary safety. I think he's good enough to move up to the star safety and big enough. I think he's weighing about 210 right now.
It's real fast, isn't it?
But our depth issues on paper are in deep safeties. So we've got him at boundary safety.